And welcome into Delaware Live Sports, powered by 302 Sports. It's week 9 of the Pigskin Picks, and we have with us Nick Alessandrini, the former Spartan, although I don't think we have St. Mark's on the picks for this week. So,
No, we do not. That's it.
I don't know, as always, when they Trey Mitchell. So let's get started with our picks for this week, week 9. Trey, great week last week, 7-1. So
Ooh.
I think that's
Ooh.
three straight weeks at 7-1. Let's start with Single A, 6 o'clock kickoff from Dagsboro, 4-4 Conrad versus 7-1 Indian River. Trey, who do you have in this single A contest?
Yeah, I doubted IR early in the year, taking Polytech when they traveled to Polytech, and that was a mistake. The Indians outscored their opponents 368 to 114. They've pitched two shutouts the last 2 weeks, and Conrad struggled on offense in big games like Brandywine and Polytech. I'm not making the same mistake twice. I'm taking Indian River.
Nick, who do you got? Conrad and Indian River. Hey, if Conrad hadn't changed their name, we'd have two Indians going at it here, the old Redskins, but now the
There you go. Yeah.
Wolves.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow Trey's lead here. You heard the stat from him, the shutouts last 2 weeks, the point differential for Indian River. I'm gonna go with the Indians as well. Like Conrad, a younger team. They have some talent over there. Had a chance to check them out earlier this year, one of their home games against Brandywine, that Trey referenced. Again, young team, they're gonna get better as the years go, new coaching staff, etc. I'm gonna go with the Indians though here in this one.
Like the Indians are on a mission after 3 straight years of making the state tournament and have yet to make the finals. Indian River takes another step toward the district championship with a win here. Friday, 3 o'clock start, odd start because it's at St. Andrews. Seaford at 3-5 versus 1-7 St. Andrews. Another Class A game, Trey. Who do you have?
Yeah, in their only meeting last year, St. Andrews, they laid the hammer on Seaford 41 to 11. But the Saints, they've given up 148 points in their last 3 games. And just looking at their common opponents, both teams have lost to First State Higher and Polytech. But referencing the 140 points they've given up, and just looking at the kind of differentials here, I'm leaning towards Seaford in this game, and it looks like their defense might be a little bit better here.
Nick, St. Andrews in the tournament 2 years in a row. Maybe not this year.
No, not looking that way, right? But again, they can always play good football there towards the end of the season. But I'm going to stick with the Seaford Blue Jays. I'm going to roll with Trey again here. He's been hot, but I'm going to stick with Seaford here in this one. Blue Jays playing great football as of late. Again, so let's see if they can carry that now on the road.
Seaford's a bubble team to qualify for the Class A tournament. If they can win their final 2 games, they could find themselves in the dance. St. Andrews went to Dagsboro last year, as Trey said, and they took it to Indian River 41-11. Friday afternoon, the Blue Jays returned to favor. Seaford wins here. And our first big game on the slate, AAA game, 4-4 Smyrna, 3-5 St. George's, 11 a.m. kickoff in Middletown. Trey.
Yeah, Smyrna, it's that time of the year. They're peaking at the right time, but with that being said, St. George's is a dangerous team that you can't overlook them. Their defense is averaging 23 points a game, and Smyrna's offense is averaging 22 points a game. But on this 3 week run, Smyrna's on. They've gotten that average up to 39 points. In order for St. George's to get this done, I think they need to slow the game down. Looking at common opponents, St. George's lost to a Dover team that Smyrna handled pretty much. I'm going to lean towards Smyrna on the road here.
Nick, Smyrna coming on hot here in the backside of the schedule.
Yeah, me and Tracy and eye to eye. I know Glenn had a chance to, me and Glenn and I had a chance to do that game with Appo a few weeks ago, and they really got something going, even though they lost that game to the Jaguars. You could tell that they were kind of getting going in the right direction. And as Trey said, the last couple of weeks, they've been getting better and better. And it's, as you mentioned, that time of the year, it seems like for the Smyrna Eagles. But again, John Wilson, a fantastic coach, was my coach there at St. Mark's. You could never count out any team, that he is leading the way of. So St. George is going to be a tough battle. I think the first time Smyrna is going to have an 11 a.m. kickoff so far this year. So going to have to adapt there with a small trip, but I'm going to lean with the Smyrna Eagles. Again, as Trey mentioned, getting hot at the right time. It seems to be kind of their theme each and every year.
Well, you talk about a team getting hot at the right time. It seems like they don't turn the heat on in Smyrna until late October. St. George, they played teams tough this year, and they're much better than that 3-5 record
I
shows.
agree.
But the morning start, it's not going to affect the Eagles. Smyrna wins, sets up an all-important district championship game with Sussex Central next week, and that's a home game
That'll be a
for
fun
the
one.
Eagles, yes. Double A game, Sussex Tech throwing their hat in the ring here. Sussex Tech 5-3. Big win over Milford last week. They're going to take on number 7 Woodbridge. 6-2. Woodbridge lost to Lake Forest. They dropped like a sack of potatoes. Went from all the way from 2 to 7.
Yeah.
Trey.
Yeah, Sussex Tech last week they rushed for 408 yards. against Milford. That 1-2 punch of Kyle Thompson, Isaiah Jones is a handful for many teams this season. But the Ravens are going to see a very aggressive defense in Woodbridge. Woodbridge is overall this year been playing well on both sides of the ball, and Tech, they've only thrown the ball about 30 times this year, so I imagine Woodbridge is going to pin their ears back and get in that backfield. Um, look for Cameron Johnson. He could be a nightmare. And you know, looking at common opponents, they both lost to Lake Forest, but Tech's defense gave a lot of points to Lake Forest, and Woodbridge lost a close one. I think Woodbridge. I think the defense is going to be too much here. I think they're going to stop that run. It's going to be Woodbridge.
Nick, Sussex Tech's going to be going over to Woodbridge to take on a ticked off Marvin Dooley team after losing to Lake Forest.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go with, right? The team that I was thinking about was kind of a rebound game here for the Woodbridge Blue Raiders, going back over the rankings that you led or that you alluded to just a few moments ago, all the way from 2 to 7. And we'll see, I'm sure those guys, see that when they check the rankings there early in the week, but they're ready for a bounce back. As you mentioned, I think home field going to be a close game. I think home field may play a little part in it, though. I'm going to go with the Raiders in a narrow one here over the Ravens.
Like you said, the Blue Raiders coming off that's an upset loss to Lake Forest
Yep.
last week. Woodbridge, they could still win the district with a win over Del Mar and some other factors that we're going to look into next week. So the Blue Raiders are still in the hunt for a AA District 3 title. Sussex Tech, they cannot get the auto bid. And even with 2 more wins, they may end up on the outside looking in. They don't have a lot of bonus points coming. So there's a lot more on the line here for Woodbridge. The Ravens have played much improved the last 2 weeks. Do they have any more magic to pull back-to-back upsets? I like Woodbridge in that stingy defense here at home on Friday. A big upstate game, independent game, a rivalry game. 4-4 Wilmington Friends, 5-3 Tower Hill. Trey, who do you got?
Yeah, like you said, it's another big rivalry game. Tower Hill jumped out to a hot 4-0 start before losing 3 straight. But they got together last week, beating Odessa. And last week, I talked about Friends. They've been alternating wins and losses. Had a little pattern going. They were due for a win. They got a win. So with that theory, they're due for a loss. But looking at these common opponents, they both beat Odessa. They both lost to Howard. The one that sticks out is Mount Pleasant. Tower Hill lost. Friends, put up 38 points. So I'm gonna say they're gonna break the pattern here. They're gonna get another win. I'm gonna go with Friends.
Nick, very rare do we talk about Tower Hill and Wilmington Friends, both teams possibly not making that AA tournament. Usually one of the two of them, whoever wins the independent conference, gets in, but a Tower Hill win, I think Friends is done.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, Friends has been dealing with, not only the roster size issues that you've had the last couple of years, but a lot of injuries for them so far this year. Both teams very well coached. I kind of thought this might be the game that I go away and we all differ on some of them, but Trey went Friends too, so I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to go with the Quakers in this one, kind of a mini upset if you want to call it that. You said it's a rivalry game, so these things can go either way, but I'm going to go with the Kangaroos in this one here, man.
Kangaroos, yeah, the Friends Quakers. As you know, Nick, up there, 2 miles. 2 miles separate these arch rivals. Tower Hill's last win in this series was back in 2015 with an AJ Falco fourth quarter score and then a 2-point conversion for the win. Both teams are on the bubble. Both have a tough Week 10 opponent. So this is a must-win game for both teams. I think Friends gets the Hillers for the 9th straight year
Wow, how about
and
that?
sets up a big finale with Archmere for maybe a state tournament spot. Let's
Clean
go
sweep.
to another AA game, district game. 8-0 Caravel, 4-4 DMA. The Bucks are number one. The DMA is number 5. Trey.
Yeah, Caravel, they're averaging 40 points a game. DMA is averaging a little bit over half of that. Caravel's on a 21 game win streak, and I think that streak continues. I'm going Caravel.
Nick, you've gotten to see Caravel a couple times. I asked Pat Gary Answers last week, can anybody beat him? He decided not to take that challenge. What do you think? Can anybody step in front of the Bucks this year?
No, I don't think so. I'll come out and say I'll say no. Just what I've seen out of them the last couple of years, in all three phases really of the ball. That the defense is, I would argue, one of the best in the state, no matter at any level. That's how good they are defensively, and then the offense is above average enough to where, just overall they're that good of a football team. Coach Reed does a great job over there. You get to see him in some of these Delaware games, like when you guys are out there on Saturdays at the Tub. They're just on one of those hot streaks now for a couple years where you see some of those teams go through these things. And I think that this is just one of those time periods that belongs to the Bucks. We saw it again. It could have been 2 years ago. It was a big win for the Quakers and Friends. Both teams undefeated heading into that one. And if it wasn't for that loss, they could be on a 3-year tear for Caravel. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to go out and say it like that. And I think it's going to be all Bucks this year in 2A.
And the way I asked the question to Pat was, it was a little different, but he wasn't willing to say anybody. He was agreed with it, that he doesn't see anybody beating Caravel
Yeah. I know
as
we've
well.
talked about it too, off the air and stuff like that about how good they've looked. And again, some of these Class 2A teams might be able to give them a run, some well-coached teams that play clean football. And you got to have one of those games, any given Sunday, as they like to say. But, on average, this Caravel team's going to be very tough to take down.
DMA is another team making a second half push to make the 2A playoffs. I think DMA is one of the top 8 teams in 2A, but a 5-5 record will most likely keep them home for the playoffs. A must-win here for Delaware Military Academy. With that said, Caravel continues their roll toward a repeat state title. Game the Upstate crew is going to have this week. It's 7-1 Polytech at 3-5 Brandywine. Glenn Frazier and Pat Gariantes will be on the call. Trey Mitchell, the Panthers, and the Bulldogs.
Yeah, it's senior night for the Bulldogs, but they got a pretty young roster, and Polytech has been pretty consistent this year, coming off that since that lone loss to Indian River. Brandywine has 2 losses to a pair of AA teams, so they've played a little bit tougher schedule, and they did hold Indian River to just 23 points. So I think the key is what Brandywine team shows up. Is that 3-win Brandywine team or the 5-loss Brandywine team? Looking at their common opponents, First State Military Academy kind of sticks out. Polytech put up some points on them, while Brandywine lost by 2 scores. So I'm gonna go with Polytech on the road.
Nick, you got to see Brandywine early on in the season, big home Saturday game. Polytech only losses in the past 2 years have been to Indian River and then upset loss to Wilmington Charter in the semifinals last year. Big game on the line. Who do you got in this one?
I'm going to go with the downstate team here. I'm going to lean Polytech as well. I think it's going to be one of these close games. There's some good matchups, on the slate this week. Again, Brandywine, the home team in this one's a little bit of a travel for Polytech. And let me tell you, from seeing them up close and personal, Brandywine has some weapons. Chase Beaupront, the young quarterback, is a pretty good player. And then you've got some really good skill position players they have offensively, with Drummond, track star. Once they get the ball in his hands, some good things can happen. But going back and checking out Polytech on film, I know we've done some of their games so far this year, and I think it's just a little bit of a Polytech or a different Polytech team, I guess I should say. Give me the Panthers in a close one here on the road this weekend.
Polytech, they're trying to match their best season in school history. Right now, they're looking at the number 3 seed in the state tournament. But don't be fooled by this Brandywine 3-5 record. It could depend, as Trey said, which Brandywine team shows up. If the one that beat Conrad 41-7 shows up, they could knock the Polytech Panthers off their path. The Panthers are big in the trenches. I think that gives Polytech the advantage and the win on Friday night. And our last game, which is our downstate game of the week, I'll have with Jim Tack on Friday night, is 4-4 Laurel and 4-4 Lake Forest. Neither team, or Lake Forest is now ranked number 6. 5 o'clock kickoff out of Felton. Trey, you've seen these 2 teams. You know about these 2 teams. Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, playoffs begin this week for these 2 teams. You're not necessarily out, but a loss, and you're dependent on others to get yourself in the tournament. And a win, you control your own destiny. They're very similar. They both run option type offenses. They got playmakers in the passing game, 2 tough defenses, great linebackers. It could come down to a turnover. It's going to come down to who's going to be extraordinary out there on the field. Even in their common opponents, very similar. Both have wins over CR by 2 scores. Both have a loss to Delmar by 1 score. I mean, they're rather identical. And it makes it tough. I've gone back and forth, but if I was a bet man, I'd take Lake Forest and Lakeland here. So I'm gonna go Lake Forest.
Nick, Route 13 corridor there on the west side of the state. Got Lake Forest out of Kent County and Laurel out of Sussex County. If you've ever seen an old Henny South game, they're knockdown, drag-out fights. That's what we're going to have this Friday night. Who do you have in this?
Man, this is one, and like Trey, I know we do this, earlier in the week before we come on, and I make my picks before we go on the air. But I was back and forth all way, from when we sent this earlier in the week. Kind of started with leaning towards Laurel, then I started leaning towards the Spartans of Lake Forest. So back and forth I've been even today leading up to the show tonight. And I'm gonna stick with Trey here and stick with Lake Forest, another home team in a close matchup. Trey mentioned they both got weapons. I just think the skill position players here for Lake Forest can make some big plays here at home in this one. Again, I've seen Laurel. I love what they've been doing the last couple of years, even moving up a class and still being successful. So this is a toss up here, but give me the Spartans there at home.
This is our downstate game of the week. Postseason on the line in this game. I think it's a must win for Lake Forest, and without help from others, potentially a must win for Laurel. Defense was a concern for the Spartans in the preseason, but that has been where they've shined this year. Lake Forest defense only allowing 17 points per game, and they have played one of the toughest schedules in AA. The Bulldogs, they're battle tested as well with their schedule, with 2 losses coming from number 2 Sussex Central in AAA and number 1 Caravel. This is going to be a low-scoring game, which favors both teams. Uh, I'm just going to lean towards Lake Forest in this one, home team only. They're coming off a win. Laurel's coming off a loss. Lake Forest gets the must-win victory here Friday night. Nick, up north, you guys have you've seen a lot of Caravel, a little bit of Sally's. What team sticks out in your mind right now out of all 3 classes? Just sticks out to you?
Six, I'll throw a couple things at you guys real quick. I'm going to start with Caravel. We already referenced them earlier in the program. I don't think, and again, Class 2A is a little bit different, but I think they might be a head and shoulders above some of these other teams. Hopefully they could get, a contested one here throughout the playoffs or maybe in the championship. I just think they are that good. And having seen Sally's play this past weekend against Middletown, for me, Sally's and Apple were the 2 teams coming into that matchup a few weeks ago that I'd really been paying attention to and seeing a lot of those teams. And Sally's really looked good in that game. I'll tell you, that defense is phenomenal. Gene does such a good job with them the last couple of years. Just to see the evolution of them offensively and some of those guys has been really fun to watch. I think Sally's is very good. We'll see if Middletown, Smyrna, or Appo can kind of close that gap or narrow things up. I know Sussex Central is right there. I think Sussex Central might be the second best team right here at the moment to maybe give them a run later on. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I think Sally's, has been the team so far. You're defending state champions, right? Caravel in 2, Sally's in 3. But I think Sussex Central is right there in Class 2A. So I would love to see that kind of matchup maybe down in the future. If Appo can get healthy, I think there would be a team to watch out for as well, depending on the health of Drummond and some of those other guys, offensively and defensively and up front for the Jaguars, though. But as always, Class 1A is going to be a lot of fun, and that's going to come down to the wire. That's kind of maybe the biggest toss-up class you got so far here as we head into the playoffs. So those are kind of the storylines that I'm focusing on here as we progress into week 9.
Jeremy, answer the question in a different fashion. Sally's looking for a repeat. Caravel looking for a repeat. Tappa looking for a repeat.
Sorry.
Does the North take over again, or does an Indian River stand in the way and bring a trophy down below the ditch?
Uh, um, yeah, it is all upstate schools looking to repeat here. Yeah, there's 2 possible downstate schools that jump out to me. I think Indian River's one. I do really think Indian River get it done this year. And like Nick said, I don't count Central out, man. Like the way they play football, the way they run the ball and control the clock, they're a turnover away on defense from taking any of those big schools out. But yeah, I think Indian River can definitely get it done this year.
Yeah, they did it once already this year, the win over Middletown. And what was fascinating to me in the win over Middletown is Sussex Central had 4 turnovers in that game. 4 turnovers in that game. And then but when it came late, they forced a punt. They got the ball down the field quickly and scored twice and won that game. I just don't know if they can do that 3 times. And they're probably going to see a Middletown or an Apple again in the semis, and then possibly a Salesian. That's a hard trick to pull 2, 3 times. in the playoffs. So as usual, thanks guys. Nick, I think you're going away this weekend. You're not calling any
That's right.
games.
Yeah, the weird two bye week for Delaware
Right.
football this year. We know with the jump up to FBS. So I actually had a wedding this weekend in Florham Park, New Jersey. So it worked out. Don't have to go anywhere except for there. So it worked out with the bye week. But I'll be there. Unfortunately, unable to be around for some of the high school matchups this week. But it's going to be fun nearing that time of the year where it's playoffs right around the corner. So looking forward to it.
And Trey, obviously home daddy duty, but it's time to get the bleach out and start getting the matches cleaned up because right around the
That's
corner,
right.
wrestling season
Yeah.
starts.
Yeah,
Almost that time.
week and a half, Veterans Day, we start bright and early.
Here we go.
Can't
I
wait.
want to thank you guys. Folks, we'll see you at kickoff. Those are your picks for this week, and we'll see you at kickoff.